At the very beginning, I would like to thank for inviting me to this wonderful place, and I'm so happy to be able to talk about American philosophy and my native philosophy at the same time. Such a wonderful place. Problem. If I were to follow the title written in the program, it would have to be that I'm going to say about something that did not exist. Because, to my judgment, there has been no influence of James and Royce upon Polish philosophy. So perhaps it is a good idea to tell you why it did not happen. Please note, in the text, a huge difference has been made between influence and reception. I understand that influence is something that rearranges or changes or modifies or reconstructs your way of thinking. So when you are under an influence, you think in a different way than before. Reception is that you note, you notice, you see or hear something without changing your mind about this. So the title of my presentation is James and Royce in Polish Philosophy, an Uneasy Reception. And I would limit my presentation to big names in Polish philosophy and in American philosophy. Polish philosophy did not make use of the great opportunity it had at the beginning of the 20th century to absorb William James, Josiah Royce, and American philosophy in general. Polish-American contacts in philosophy that did take place at that time, although involving big names on both sides, did not produce any intensive exchange of ideas or initiate any common large-scale undertakings. James' works were translated into Polish very soon after publication in America. However, it is hardly possible to notice any influence of James upon Polish thought. Thus, Is Life Worth Living, The Will to Believe, Habit were translated in 1901. A Pluralistic Universe in 1911. Pragmatism in 1911 too. And the Varieties of Religious Experience in 1918. The scattered and indeed rare attempts to promote pragmatic ideas that followed these translations had only very limited success. In my opinion, there are different reasons for this. Firstly, the strong cultivation of the metaphysical tradition taken from Plato, Aristotle, and scholastics. Secondly, the traditional Catholic background of Poland. Thirdly, the national and messianic rather than communal and practical dimension of social and political thought. Fourthly, the strong influence of German philosophy. Fifthly, Polish thinkers at that time did not speak English as their second language. Usually it was German, and did not think of America as a source of philosophical inspiration, unlike Germany and also France. Generally, the character of Polish philosophy was pessimistic rather than optimistic, static rather than dynamic, spiritual rather than naturalistic, speculative rather than empirical, and therefore the successful reception of pragmatism could not take place. The first opportunity at the very beginning of professional philosophy in the US could have materialized from the excellent philosophical contact between William James and the eminent Polish philosopher and author of an influential work on Plato published in the English language, The Origin and Growth of Plato's Logic, Wincenty Lutosławski. The intellectual contact started when Lutosławski gave lectures at some American universities, and this led to a philosophical friendship between these two scholars. They corresponded to each other, and moreover, James, in the varieties of religious experience, called Lutosławski his friend, and also wrote in 1899 preface to Lutosławski's The World of the Souls, where James appreciated Lutosławski's width of intellectual horizon and the strength of his romantic engagement. However, due to different temperaments and personalities, as well as the incompatible aims they were aiming for, it was not possible for Lutosławski either to promote James or to introduce American philosophy into Poland. As it seems to me, he was sensitive to the differences between them rather than to any common perspectives for the future. Thus, Lutosławski, wrote in his biography that James was, quote, a living symbol of American spirit, a decent man, extraordinarily intelligent and clever, end of quote. On the other hand, however, he did not like James' ignorance of the history of philosophy, and chiefly James' inability to read Plato and Aristotle in Greek, about which Lutosławski commented this way, quote, this alone was enough to mark the difference between us, end of quote. For James, Lutosławski continued in his biography, quote, each opinion aspired to self-assertion, end of quote. Whereas for Lutosławski, quote, there was a golden thread linking the true thinkers of all peoples and epochs, making the unity of this philosophia perennis, which results from the work of many thinkers throughout the ages, end of quote. In addition to this, Lutosławski, Platonists, metaphysicians, spiritualists, and classicists, that he was, felt the superiority of European tradition in philosophy and channeled his energy to activities that aimed at the creation of a Polish national system of messianic philosophy, looking for stimulation in Polish, Greek, and German thought. Another occasion for making American-Polish, or rather Polish-American philosophical contact fruitful was the emergence of the world-famous Polish school of logic and philosophy called the Lwów Warsaw School, founded by Kazimierz Twardowski at the end of the 19th century. One of its biggest names, Jan Łukasiewicz, gave a speech about James' pragmatism at a meeting of the Polish Philosophical Society in Lwów in 1907. He called James' ideas fresh and animating. However, he claimed that logical strictness is not his strong side, and that the book should be read with criticism. In his opinion, for pragmatists, the convictions are true when they facilitate easy and comfortable action. And he was not alone in saying pragmatism this way. Interestingly and characteristically for Polish scholars, pragmatism was not only associated with logical and philosophical carelessness, but also with moral relativism. And according to them, it narrowed down to the efficiency of practical activity, something sounding rather dangerous because of the lack of a stable moral direction of this practical activity while aiming at the target. Such an approach was also present in the most popular manual of logic, epistemology and methodology written by one of the top Polish thinkers ever, Tadeusz Kotarbiński, who also belonged to the Lwów-Warsaw School. By the way, it was Kotarbiński who successfully promoted praxeology, the idea of efficient activity, but strangely enough, he did not refer to pragmatists as supporters of his concept. Although, at least in my opinion, it was possible and would have been a great link between Polish and American philosophy. As it seems, the most popular promotion of James was made by another member of the Lwów-Warsaw School and the most eminent Polish historian of philosophy ever, Władysław Tatarkiewicz, who in his 3-volume History of Philosophy presented James' life, ideas and the context of his thought. Since Tatarkiewicz's book, with over 20 editions, has been up till now the most popular manual of the history of philosophy in Poland, a book that is known to each and every student of philosophy in this country, and very many liberal arts students too. James, Royce, as well as American pragmatism, became known, at least in its basics, to many generations of readers. It should be added that Tatarkiewicz was especially skillful in his clear presentations of the ideas. One of the reasons must have been that he was also an aesthetician and historian of aesthetics, and the clarity and order of the presentations are as if natural in his writings. However, due to the character of his presentations, that is, an outline of James' thought to be directed at students, this could not be a source of inspiration as far as profound studies are concerned. It should be added that Tatarkiewicz was also responsible for introducing Royce, who was much less present in Polish thought than James. An outline of his philosophy was presented in the above-mentioned History of Philosophy by Tatarkiewicz in the part devoted to American idealism. Let me add that as regards the presentation of Royce's thought in Poland, Tatarkiewicz was followed only by Leszek Tochanowicz, who in one of his books wrote about Royce's idea of the self. By the way, as regards Royce, I should imagine that his philosophy of loyalty could have been of some interest, I suspect, if translated into the Polish language. It could have been even more stimulating for the then thinkers in Poland fighting for the political, cultural, spiritual and philosophical identity. Royce might have had a bigger chance of being promoted. And the reason why he was not better known is that such philosophy was looked for in Germany at that time rather than in America. Coming back to James, another occasion for the promotion of his thought and pragmatism in general was Florian Znaniecki, Polish philosopher and sociologist, who lectured at the University of Chicago Columbia, Urbana, and even became the president of the American Sociological Association. His works, out of which the most famous was written with collaboration with W.I. Thomas, the Polish peasant in Europe and America, and his idea of humanistic coefficient, belong to his great contribution to modern thought. Znaniecki, in his early works, mentioned James and was sympathetic to the spirit of pragmatism, especially as regards voluntarism and anti-dogmatism, a conviction of the huge roles a social background and a historic context play in shaping values and ideas, the humanistic coloring of all objects perceived, and the meaning of actual experience here and now. However, he referred more to Dilthey, Bergson, Neo-Kantians, and Polish tradition rather than to James. Despite the fact that he was interested in pragmatism and his own thought shared similar traits, it is difficult to say that it was influenced by James. During the communism era in Poland, the most significant introduction of James into Polish philosophy has been done by the most eminent as well as unbiased promoter of American pragmatism in Poland, Hanna Buczyńska-Garewicz, authoress of books on pragmatism, on Peirce, and on James. Her work started in the late 1960s and has continued up to the present day. Indeed, it is nowadays, with the collapse of communism and the opening of borders, both physical and mental, to the external world, that the enthusiasm and wide-scale interest in American thought has taken place. A host of translators, commentators, and researchers study and promote James as well as pragmatism, and James' works are translated and all translated once re-edited. It must be admitted, however, that the growing interest in American philosophy has not produced any sort of Polish pragmatism, nor any serious centers for the research of James' thought, not to mention Royce's. It is hoped that something like this might happen within the next few years. Thank you.